taxability of employer reimbursement. So a non-accountable plan, we want to first learn what this is. This is a type of reimbursement arrangement between an employer and an employee for business expenses where the employee does not need to account to the employer for their expenses. Now, we could think if you've got per diem, we'll mention some of this later as well, but start to get to the thought of you're getting money per day if you're on a trip, if you're traveling for work. That's kind of what we're talking about here, and we'll kind of dive into it further. Now, under such a plan, this is a non-accountable plan. The employee does not need to substantiate the expenses or return any excess reimbursements to the employer. I mentioned earlier about how if you work for a public accounting firm and you work like a dog, you're working crazy hours. Yeah, if you work a certain amount of time, you will get a certain amount of money per day to spend on a meal. For that, you can't take the full amount. You can only spend what you are allotted. So let's say you get $25 per day to spend on food as long as you work a certain amount of hours. You can't go and spend $20 and take the extra $5 as cash. Nope, if you spend $20, you spend $20. The extra $5 is, gone forever. The significance of a non-accountable plan lies primarily in its tax implications. Now, amounts received under a non-accountable plan are considered taxable income for the employee. They are included in the employee's wages on Form W-2 and are subject to income tax withholding and payroll taxes such as Social Security and Medicare taxes. Prior to 2018, employees could potentially deduct certain unreimbursed work-related expenses as miscellaneous itemized deductions on Schedule A of their return, subject to a 2% of AGI limitation. However, that good old Tax Cuts and Jobs Act suspended the miscellaneous itemized deductions subject to the 2% floor for the tax years 2018 through 2025. This suspension means that employees cannot deduct these types of expenses during the years, making non-accountable plans less beneficial from a tax perspective for many employees during this period. Now, employers may choose to use accountable plans instead, under which reimbursements that meet certain IRS criteria are not considered taxable income for the employee. So it's something to note here. And mentioning this will reverse in 2025 unless there's some radical change that happens. But also, there's a lot of people taking this exam who I'm sure are familiar with the tax code prior to the big Tax Cuts and Jobs Act change. So I do mention that, bring it up a lot. You're not crazy. It did happen at one point. It did work like that. So this is what it was before. This is what it was after. And some of these things will go back after a certain year. Now, under a non-accountable plan, an employer reimburses employees for business expenses without requiring them to substantiate their expenses or return any excess reimbursement. We saw that. Just diving in again, we're seeing examples here, so I want to reiterate these points. In this case, the amounts received by the employee are considered as a part of their taxable wages and must be reported on their W-2. Now, the employee may deduct the actual expenses incurred as miscellaneous itemized deductions, but again, that's only for the specific tax years if that is allowed. Let's see an example. Let's say that Daisy Corp has a non-accountable plan to reimburse employees for business-related travel expenses. Daisy Corp does not require employees to provide proof of the expenses and allows employees to keep any amount not spent. You can think of this as per diem, so some of you may have experienced this in your line of work. I personally never did, but I'm quite jealous. If you're traveling for work, a lot of times the company might say, here's $75 per day in cash, or however they get it to you, But you have $75 per day. You can spend that on food. You can bank it. You can just throw it in your bank account. But that is a form of compensation, right? Non-accountable plan. That's kind of what's dealing with here. Under the plan, Jane, a Daisy Corp employee for the full year, receives $300 per month for business travel expenses. So they just give you the money, say, have fun. There you go. At the end of the year, Jane informs Daisy Corp that her total business travel expenses were $2,500, and Jane decides not to return any of the overpayment to Daisy Corp. Now, in this case, Jane should report $3,600, which comes from the $300 per month times 12 months as a part of her gross income for the year. This amount will be included as part of Jane's taxable wages on her W-2. Just another thing I'd note is take a look at your W-2, and if you don't have one, Google the form W-2. It wouldn't hurt. It's something you're likely going to see on the exam, especially when it comes to SIMs, that you're going to have to not only understand how it's laid out, but also you're going to have to use that to fill out a 1040 for, again, a SIM, tax purposes. And it doesn't hurt for you to understand how it works in the real world to make sure your own tax situation is under control. So that's something I would definitely recommend if you do work and you've worked and you have a W-2. Take a look at your own personal one because it means a lot more to you if it's your own W-2 as compared to it just being a random W-2 generated. Note that actual business travel expenses of $2,500 would be considered miscellaneous itemized deductions and would be subject to this 2% AGI limitation. However, as mentioned earlier, this is going to be suspended for 2018 to 2025. And we see here why a non-accountable plan may not be the best for tax purposes, but also it really doesn't matter if you don't itemize. So just a lot of things to consider, different circumstances.
Hey there! Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.